Welcome to the Small Business Rally Point for Monday, September 28th. And now that it's gotten cold, it feels like fall and winter is really coming. But we're not going to think that way because it's still only September. My name's Pat Miller, the Idea Coach, and thanks for joining us here on the Rally Point. This show is sponsored by Serendipity Labs and the new Idea Collective for Small Business Owners. It is produced by the one, the only, the amazing showrunner herself, Jennifer Buchholz. Thank you, JB, for being the brains of the operation and running everything behind the scenes today. I mentioned the Idea Collective. It is reopening to new members on October 5th, and later on in the call, we'll tell you about a reveal event that we're hosting and your opportunity to come into the group and sample the Idea Collective, come into the Idea Slams, hit our Friday finish line, meet some of the members, and understand what small business collaboration can be in a group, not just connection. There is a difference, and it's happening in the Idea Collective. Now, today's going to be fun. I've been looking forward to this conversation. It's been on the books for like 5 or 6 weeks, but it's finally going to happen today. We welcome Jay English, the cross-cultural coach, to the call. It's going to be an enlightening conversation for everyone, and we're going to make sure that we keep the lines open on the chat. We really want you to ask questions if you have them, because that's what Jay specializes in, is getting the conversation started so everyone can understand each other better. So make sure you're ready to answer questions, or ask questions rather, and then Jay will jump in and answer them for you. Also, speaking of having you jump in, we're going to have a roundtable conversation later on in the call. We're going to do book recommendations, and that's why I'm so excited that Claire Lauer's on the call. Her baby decided to take a nap right on time so she could jump in. She's the moderator of the book club inside the Idea Collective, so I'll be curious to hear what she has. But what business book changed your life and why? So I'm looking forward to those recommendations later on in the call. Well, I had heard about this gentleman through a mutual friend, the mayor of podcasting, Elsie Flanard. He told me about a guy named Jay, and he's this pastor, and he's this really smart guy, and he's starting all these interesting conversations. And then I had the chance to talk to Jay English. I'm like, man, I have to get you on Rally Point so everyone can know what you're doing. So let's welcome to the call. He's a leader, he's a pastor, and is the CEO of Plain English, Jay English. Jay, good afternoon, my friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Pat. Thank you for having me on, and it's good to see everybody. High five to Elsie. Appreciate you, man.
You got to pay respect to the mayor of Podcast Town. You can't just gloss over that.
He'll raise my taxes.
So, you do something that's really unique, right? You're trying to enlighten and connect people and like really start tough conversations. You're speaking truth. On your website, it talks about driving unity and answering questions, teaching others. If someone has never met Jay English before, what are you doing? So everyone just gets an idea of what you're up to.
Yeah, I'm building bridges. That's really what it comes down to. The world is extremely divided right now in a lot of places. And I'm doing everything possible to bring people back together, specifically building bridges so that we can engage in conversations around issues of race, culture, and diversity.
So what is Plain English about? That's the company that all of this activity happens inside. Is that right?
That is, man. And that's the name. My wife actually came up with that. She makes fun of how I talk and how direct and blunt I tend to be. And she said that you should just call it Plain English because that's who you are. And you know what? I have to admit, my wife was probably right. And that hurts as a husband to say.
But it's normally the right thing to err on that side, right? Like my wife, she's probably right. Just that's a happy wife thing, right? So
it is, man. It is.
I heard you say on the website, and I think it's a brilliant way to put it. And I don't think I've ever heard it put this way, because to hear the phrase cross-cultural literacy, that 3-word phrase to me makes it so clear and it makes so much sense, but I haven't heard that particular phrase used a lot. Does that tend to resonate with people when you say that?
It does. Obviously, literacy is something that's very important for all of us. Being able to read, being able to understand, being able to comprehend, those are major components of education in any way, shape, or form. So for me, it's that taking that and bringing it to this place of cross-cultural relations. We have to learn how to better understand each other. We have to learn the language. We have to learn the cultures. And so much of our divide is just, honestly, it's based on ignorance. It's based on just what I don't know and what you may not know and what neither one of us knows about each other. So how do we make people more literate in different cultures? How do we help you understand so that you can come together, so that you can understand that maybe on my side of the block, I might talk a little louder than maybe you do on your side of the block, but I'm actually not being aggressive. This is just how I talk. As opposed to, oh, I'm fearful, or, he's being aggressive. And some of these things that we get into specifically in the corporate world, where some of the things that I do at home may not translate and actually get me written up at work.
And that's where it starts to really get into the business world, right? Like how those misunderstandings can lead to actions that aren't appropriate with what happens. So how do you approach things differently with plain English? Like diversity and inclusion training can be a very off-putting word to some people. It sounds weird, but you do it differently. Can you talk about how you go about it differently with plain English?
Absolutely. So number one, I try to stay away from the word training. I really use the word coaching more so than anything. So I have a background in corporate, HR background, sales and marketing, training, all that wonderful stuff. And whenever I saw the word training come across my email, I'd be like, why? I don't want to go. I already know it's going to be boring. It's going to be some dude that I don't want to listen to. I'd be nudging the person next to me. Please keep me awake. Don't let me fall asleep and you let them find out I was asleep. That was me with training. I had some amazing coaches growing up that I still remember to this day, though. And they motivated me to do things that maybe I didn't even want to do originally, or they gave me truth that maybe I didn't even know I wanted, but they pushed me to do more. I became better because of it. I'm still in relationship with them. So when I think of coaching, I think of something that's going to motivate me to make some changes that are necessary, that might even be difficult, but are actually going to be beneficial for me, not just in this environment, but good coaching goes outside the environment. Like I can take stuff my coach taught me back in my senior year of high school, and I'm utilizing that stuff to this day, some odd 30 years later. I'm still utilizing that stuff. So that's how I look at it. As far as how we're different, number one, I'm going to be direct. I'm going to be honest. If you don't want direct honesty, I'm probably not the person you want to talk to. I'm very driven, very passionate about this. These conversations need to happen, and they need to happen in a place that's going to be safe, but that also we're going to challenge each other. We're going to learn from each other. But the big thing that I'm really huge on is a level of devotion to this process, where it's not just me coming in and speaking or coming in and coaching you for one session. I want to form long-term relationships. I want to help. Yes, I can help educate you. Sure, I can help with even coaching, help make some decisions from a consulting standpoint. But then if you're wanting to get involved on the ground floor, if you're looking for organizations to get involved in, if you're looking for help and resources, that's another part of the aspect that Plain English provides, is a network of people and organizations and individuals that are doing this work. And if you say, I want to come alongside that and even volunteer, I want to be out in the field. I want to be out on the street. We've got connections that will allow you to do that.
What is the experience like when you go into an office or a group of people that are expecting the coaching to come in a certain way, and then it's very direct and conversational and enlightening, and then they realize, wow, I really got something out of this. I really learned. Like when you really connect with someone with the message you're trying to send, what is that like for you? What is it like to them? What kind of results are you getting?
It's hilarious for me. Again, I've got a background in this, so I know what people feel about training. They don't want to be there. They don't, and I start out my conversations with that. I already know most of you don't want to be here. People start laughing right off the bat because they know it's true. They know they don't want to be there. They want to be doing something else. People are on Zoom with half of their body dressed. They probably got on shorts underneath their nice tie and all that other stuff. You don't want to be here. But I do it in a very engaging and even a comical way to an extent, because I believe that humor breaks down a lot of walls. I acknowledge the elephants that are in the room. We talk about the stereotypes. I start off one of my sessions with even teaching you some slang words that you might want to start using, helping people better understand. There's a lot of different ways to talk. So people they're not used to it from that way, from that standpoint. It catches them off guard in a great way. And before they know it, they're engaging, they're listening, they're laughing, they're sharing stories. We're having conversations about things that they've seen. I talk about the reality of Black people dying in horror movies. Like, let's talk about that. That's a problem. That's an issue. That's a race-related issue that I have. Why does the Black guy have to die first? That's a problem. Let's deal with it. we have those conversations, but then we go deeper into some of the historical perspective. So I think there is some benefit to giving people some Novocaine before you do some surgery, before, hey, open your mouth. Let me give you this shot. You're going to laugh. It's going to be funny. But before you know it, we're going to get the problem. We're going to get to the root of this problem.
So you say on your company website that you're speaking truth and seeking unity. So I hear how once you connect with someone and speak truth, but then that unity at the end, because you're not going to change someone's mind overnight, but you might get them thinking differently. Is that really the goal of some of these coaching sessions?
Absolutely. End of the day, my number one goal is bringing people together. How do we work on this? We can't do this by ourselves. And that's just a reality. It's going to take all of us to do this. So I've worked for a number of years in the urban environment, and I'm not sure, how familiar you all may be, but when you work in the inner city and you work in an urban environment, blunt and straightforward is what works. Don't beat around the bush. Don't try to overcomplicate it. If you got to say it, just say it. People actually respect that more than playing around with a whole lot of words. So I come at it that way, but the other side of working in urban environments is if you're going to be blunt and be straightforward, show me that you love me. Make sure that I know that you care. I will accept anything you have to say if I know it comes from a place in which you actually want me to be better. You want to see me succeed. And that's what I'm bringing to these coaching sessions. I'm going to be truthful, even to the point of it hurting. But all of this truth that I'm bringing is honestly because I care about you, because I love you, because I respect you as a person. And I feel like it's a disservice if you don't know these things and you continue making decisions without this information.
How does your training and background as a pastor help you here? Having a universal truth and a universal love, do you bring a little bit of that with you when you come into these settings where you're trying to connect people and unite people? Is that a part of, I don't want to call it training, but your background that helps you deliver these messages?
100%. Being a pastor where, if I'm being honest, if you're a pastor or if you're working in a nonprofit organization with a ton of volunteers can quit on you right now with it doesn't hurt them to quit. It doesn't hurt them to leave. You don't have a paycheck to hold them. So it is very much vision related. Can I disseminate this vision and this information in a way, number one, that you're going to listen to, number two, that you're going to buy into, and then number three, you're going to act on. And I have to be able to do these through my presentation. I have to be able to do these through my relationship, because I don't have that magic carrot of a check or benefits or any of a number of things that people may listen to or deal with someone else on. That has made all the difference in the world. So I'm coming into this as a pastor. I'm used to stand up in front of people I don't know, trying to get to a very clear conclusion, but I got to take you on a journey before we get there. And I understand that. And I'm dealing with a lot of different types of people, all different backgrounds, all different learning experiences. I have served as a youth pastor. I have worked with adults and seniors. So being able to speak to all of them in one setting and know that I'm going to hit something that's going to catch each one of you, without being a pastor for all these years, I can't say I'd be able to do it in the way that I'm doing it right now. That's been an incredible training ground.
We're talking with Jay English from Plain English, and this is where we can get some questions in. If there are things that you want to know, let us know in the chat and we'll bring you into the conversation. I'm curious, what have you learned as you try and present this message to a diverse group of people? Because you have to go to where people don't think like you do or where others do, and you have to get them to pay attention and to get to what you're saying. What have you learned as a messenger that's opened their eyes? Are there ways that you're going about it that seem to work other ways than some other techniques might?
You know what? I'll tell you, here's what I learned very quickly and the adjustment that I made to my style. The world is very separated into this racist and anti-racist stance. You're either racist or you're anti-racist. And I found out, if I'm being honest, with Caucasians, that does not work. That will get the conversation all the way shut down, because that term racism or racist is an extreme for many people. Where in minority communities, we say stuff is racist. We don't mean lynching. We don't mean slavery. We just mean, that was a little not something you probably should have said or how you should have meant it. But when you go into the Caucasian world and you throw the word racism or racist out, you get a very extreme response. So for me personally, as soon as I realized that truth, I teach it in 3 phases. You've got, yes, literally anti-racist is where we want people to be. There absolutely is racism in the world, but I define racism as being a level of power and authority, as well as intent. That really helps people get an understanding. So there has to be power and authority associated with it, where you have the ability to make decisions or to prohibit people from moving forward or gaining whatever the access they're trying to get. And you're looking at their culture or their skin color, saying, this is why I'm doing that. But there's a third spot that I tend to start people in, and that's in the middle of just being culturally biased. We've all grown up in a culture with our families, and culture is just defined as, your family structure, what you believe is right or wrong, the types of music you like, what you find funny, how you get married, the type of church you attend, whatever. But from a cultural perspective, we're all biased. How we grew up is kind of how we like things. The areas we grew up in is what's normal to us. So things that I grew up and found funny or found interesting, or that's normal for me in my household, I am biased towards that. And what I realize is that a lot of people are just culturally biased. They're not racist. They're not even dealing with racism. You're dealing with people who literally don't know anything other than what they've grown up in.
Mm-hmm.
So my job is to come in. I'm not calling you a racist. I don't even believe most people are racist. I think most people are culturally biased, at worst ignorant, because they just don't know what they don't know. So let me help you. Let me explain this to you. Let me answer some questions and help you realize, here's the things that if you knew more about this, you would make different decisions. Some of the things you're doing over here that people are calling racist, you're not racist. You just don't know any better. Now, if I teach you better and you understand it, and then you go do it, that's intent.
That's different. That's right. That's premeditated.
That's right. Now you meant to do it. Now you made a conscious decision. Now we're talking about racism.
Yeah. Yeah. And culturally biased, that's an interesting, very thought-provoking point. Like, I hadn't really considered it that way. When I hear people talk about racism a lot, what I always think is, I don't care what you're saying about anybody else. I'm not sure how much free brain space people give to other people in general. We're so busy in our own stuff. How much do we think about other people in general? Which is why when people say everybody is X, whatever X is, it could be racist or thisist or that, whatever. I always think to myself, I can't, people don't think about other people that much. They're too much in their own head. So enlightening someone so they get out of cultural bias and get into acceptance or inclusion, that's step one. Would step two then be activism and being an ally and trying to change more minds, like basically enlisting in growing the number of folks that are not culturally biased? Is that the second wave of acceptance? Is that the right way to think about it?
You know what? I look at it as that would be the third one, actually. So you got the first is just understanding where I am on this culturally biased scale. Some people are worse than others. Some people grew up in multicultural areas where they're not even really that affected. They're used to kind of juggling everything. So can I understand where I'm at? That's number one. Number two is education. Am I willing to do a deep dive into learning about the historical aspect of our country, of things that have happened that maybe my school system didn't teach me? There's a ton of podcasts and books and documentaries and just things that you can learn from and start exposing yourself to. That's number two. And I'm here to help with, definitely that number two part from an education standpoint. The third piece is what you're speaking of. And that's, now that I understand where I'm at, I have a better education on what's happening. Now I want to be involved. I want to help change other people's minds. I want to be an activist. I want to be out here marching. I want to help explain to my family or my friends. I'll give you an example even. I ran into, it was a white guy. I loved him to death, man. His heart was golden, but he said something that I was like, man, you're gonna get yourself in trouble. He said, Jay, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so glad to be around you and your friends. And, just where I'm from, we don't have a lot of colored people there. And I was like, whoa, time out. The term colored, don't use it. I said, it takes me back to sitting on the back of the bus. It takes me back to segregated sinks, bathrooms, colored. Now, we were in the inner city of Milwaukee. I said, colored will not allow you to get home tonight. So don't use that term.
That's a bad one. No.
That's a bad term, but he didn't know, because where he grew up and the city he currently lives in, no black people. And that is honestly still a term that's used in his city.
Yeah.
So he came, again, cultural bias. Here's where I grew up at. This is what we do. This is what I'm used to. He used a term that many people would say, that's racist. He wasn't trying to be racist. He was actually happy to be in a diverse crowd.
Yeah.
He just expressed it very wrong.
So let me follow up on that. So you mentioned there's three different ways, right? There's knowing where you're at, there's learning what you don't know, and then there's taking action.
Yes.
How do you look at people that are taking action but don't take the first two steps? They want to almost short circuit the process and be one of the folks that's involved in whatever they're involved in, but they don't really know, just like the story you just told, they didn't do the homework to understand where they were and educate themselves, so then take action. That seems like just posturing or faking it. Is that a thing?
It's not necessarily faking it. There are people who are going to go out and march and they don't have a clue. They just know that something's wrong and I'm going to go out here and stand with people that need the help.
Yeah.
I actually appreciate that. If you get these out of order, I really could care less. I just want you to go through some type of process to try to make things better. Okay. I want my life to last as long as humanly possible. And if you decide to skip 1 and 2 so you can do number 3, I will still welcome you into the family. Now,
yeah, go ahead.
Along with that, though, is you miss out on opportunities to further explain to others. So like everybody on this call, you all have people in your vicinity that I may never get to speak to. But the more you learn, the more you can speak into that situation or to their lives or whatever questions they may have, because there is real history that people are not aware of, that once they find out, they actually look at things differently. You know, if you find out, a quick example, people struggle with thinking that slavery was 250 years ago. That was so long ago. None of that should matter. Why are we caring right now? But when I reveal to them that the Tuskegee experiment, as an example, which is where our own government told 600 African Americans that they had syphilis and basically let them die so they could see the effects of syphilis on the human body. And they're like, that really happened? Yes, it did. Well, when was that? 1932 to 1972. My grandfather was born in 1928. My mother was born in 1951. I was born in 1980. This ended 8 years before I was born. And this was something that happened that our government literally spearheaded. And that's just one of many examples. And people are like, I never knew that happened. I didn't know that was possible. Well, that can help further explain why there's a divide between African Americans and healthcare. That can help explain why there are levels of distrust between the African American community and the government. When you start realizing that our family members lived through things, redlining, the GI Bill, just random things. The fact that I think everybody here can agree that lynching is wrong. Hopefully we can all agree on that. The reality that lynching did not become a federal crime until this year. This year. Yes, I see some faces right now who are just like, are you serious? Yes, look it up. The Emmett Till anti-lynching law, February 2020. You would think we would have cut lynching out a long time ago. No, this stuff is still happening and decisions are just now being made. So there's history that people wouldn't know. And when you can explain some of these things, as opposed to just saying, I need this to change, well, people want to know why. And then when I can better explain the why behind it, a lot of times people, it doesn't just change. It's not just an engaging of the mind, it's an engaging of the heart as well, where sometimes it can really affect how people view your situation, your plight, why you're as passionate about it as you are. And that really helps bring about change, especially from a long-term perspective.
We've got some questions queuing up in the chat, but I've got more that I got to ask because I just got to know.
Go ahead.
This is me being ignorant, but you mentioned Emmett Till. Who was Emmett Till?
Absolutely. So Emmett Till, young African-American kid, about 13 years old. The story is that he whistled at a white woman down south, and a bunch of white men came and kidnapped him from his home, tortured him for hours, disfigured him completely, and then shot and killed him. This was a huge issue, I believe. I want to say back in the 50s. I might be wrong on the time frame, but his mother ended up having an open casket for his funeral, which was covered by mainstream news and media. Pictures were taken. People passed out at the casket looking at what happened to this kid, to this child, realizing these are the effects of racism. These are effects of discrimination. Fast forward many, many years later, when the young lady who claimed that he whistled at her was about to die, and she says that that never happened.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, I promise we're going to get to these questions in a minute, but I'm not done yet. Jay, I'm not done with you. Uh, what's the most frequent question you're getting right now? What's the most, like, the frequent curious question you're getting right now that you're just either surprised by, or just what's coming to you the most?
Okay, so here's the question that I'm getting the most is Black Lives Matter, the phrase, and Black Lives Matter, the movement, the exact same thing? And I get that one all the time. Well, I can't support it because, whether it's Marxist or the beliefs, or I don't even get into the argument about it. No, the answer is you got two different things: the phrase, the statement, the idea that, at least for me, my life, I want it to matter. I really want my life to matter more than I believe it has historically. If you look at the historical data, compared to the organization, if you don't want to dive into the organization, don't support it. Like, don't send them money. Don't put on your black and yellow t-shirt and go marching. Like, just don't do those things. But you can stand up and say there is inequality. I do see issues specifically in the African Americans community that I recognize is unfair and is injustice, and I want to stand up for that. So I look at it and say there's two different things. Yes, if you don't like the organization, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But at least respect the fact that historically, not to say that my life is worthless, but I do believe it has been worth less than the lives of others. When you compare it and look at the statistics, you can go down. We as African Americans should not be winning in every category. And every category, I mean, economic divide, educational divide. You're looking at from a health perspective. Like, we can go down the list of a number of things that we're winning at. And it's one of two things. Either we really are dysfunctional and absolutely lower class than everyone else on earth, or there actually is a problem somewhere. Because there's no way statistically we should be at the top of each of these things across the board, unless literally there's something wrong with us, or there actually is a system of racism that perpetuates our country.
If you're just getting to know Jay a little bit, he does some great stuff, video interviews. And you did a video interview on your Facebook page with Jonathan Brown that was fantastic. And you made a point inside there that I want to ask you about, because as soon as you said it, I'm like, I need to know more about that, because I thought it was incredible.
Yeah.
The point that you made was that before video cameras, you would hear stories of things that happened to African Americans. But now that there's video evidence of what's going on, it's different, because people who don't experience this now get to actually see it happen. How much of a game changer has video been for the African American experience?
It's night and day difference. I literally had a pastor I was doing a session with, and he asked the question, were race relations better 10 or 15 years ago? And he says, I feel like they were. You didn't hear about all of this. All of this conversation wasn't happening. Now you can't go anywhere without hearing about it. And I just laughed at him. I mean, I didn't mean to laugh at him, but I did laugh. No, it's not better. It's the same. You just now have to hear about it because we've been, as African Americans, we've been experiencing this. We've been talking about this. These things have been going on. We've been trying to tell people, but our reach was limited. Very much by segregation to begin with. We just didn't have access. Then it was by discrimination, where segregation ended, but we still didn't have access because people would not allow us onto, I'm on this show with you right now, Pat. Some years ago, this never would have happened. So we didn't have that type of access. We weren't allowed to speak out on television. We weren't allowed to be, in the newspapers. We didn't have, you could lose your job or your life depending on what part of the country you were in speaking out. So we didn't have that access. Well, here comes cell phones, and thank God for that provider who decided to put a camera in it. Mm-hmm. And now I don't have to just say it and hope somebody believes me. I can record it on my cell phone and I can show you live. I can go live. You can't say I doctored the video. You can't say I changed it. You're watching this as it's happening. And at this point, it's really drawn a very clear line. So if I'm showing you exactly what's happened, you're seeing it in the minute. And if you're still telling me that you don't see any problems and we're showing you the video, at this point, you're telling me there's nothing more I can do. Because we've been telling you, history tells us this is an issue. Anything you read outside of basically school books will show you the problem. And now we have video evidence of these issues as well. So it's been a 100% game changer. People who didn't even know racism still exists, because there are a lot of people, I thought that it ended. And we're showing them videos of people being denied access to basic things. We're showing people having the police called on them for walking in the park or sitting on benches, or like the most random things are happening. And it's amazing, people, except for us as minorities, who are saying this has been happening, but I'm glad you finally believe in me.
Yeah, we've been talking about this, but now here, watch this. And then when you see something, you really can't deny it unless, like you say, you're preconceived to deny it. And then that's a whole nother issue unto itself.
Yeah, I can't help you at that point.
Yeah, really, I can't help you.
I need to find somebody else to talk to.
Jennifer, the showrunners, can you recap all of these questions that I have? Because Jay, I've got a list as long as my arm, but I'm not done asking you questions because you're so darn good. When you were talking with Jonathan, he used an example that I don't remember what the example was, but it was something along the lines of, it's like swimming in the pool or watching someone swim in the pool. That's the difference between understanding what life is like. Like either you're in it and experiencing it, or you're watching it. And just video will at least allow you to watch it, which is better than just hear about it.
Yes.
So it was an interesting, that interview was really great. What was that on your Facebook page? Is it the Plain English Facebook page? Is that where I saw that interview? Because you have a bunch of interviews up there, right?
We do. So that is on the Plain English Facebook page. You can definitely check that out there. And we're doing just interviews. I'm doing at least one interview a month where I'm having a conversation with someone who just sees things from a very different perspective than what's mainstream. And we're talking through some of that. So this past month, Jonathan Brown has been a friend of mine. I've known him since he was 8 years old. He's known me since I was 12. And we've gone through life together, through a lot of things, a lot of ups and downs. He's had some very traumatic experiences with racism that we didn't even get into, that he's still dealing with to this day, that he still gets triggered by. And these are some of the realities that we wanted to start having, these conversations that we've been having in private. Hey, let's just get online and actually start having them in public and start exposing them. So like for next month, I'm actually having a conversation which is about life after incarceration. So what you see a lot of is something happens, what I may see as an injustice, but people, the first thing they do is bring up a person's background. What's his history? Does he have, has he been arrested before? What's his criminal background? And there are a lot of people that have a criminal background, but that should not dictate injustices being happening to them. Yeah. So I have a very good friend of mine that is doing some things nationally, who spent some time in prison. He did a number of things that got him there, which he deserved to go. He deserved to be there. But in prison, he changed his life completely. Who he is today is absolutely completely different. But we're talking through the problems and the issues he is still facing as a convicted felon and how that affects his life. Because what we would not want is something, God forbid, ever happened to him. And the first thing people would do would look into his past and say, he deserved that because he used to be. When the reality is, if you knew the things he's doing in the community today, if you knew the people he's affecting, the lives he's changing, the things that he's accomplishing, it would blow your mind and it would make you look at things so very differently. So we're trying to humanize some of these things that people have kind of been very black and white on. I'm trying to add a lot of gray to that so that you can't just say, well, he used to be. Yeah, but we all used to be something. I did a lot of stupid stuff in my past. I'm not who I used to be. I actually learned from those things. Thank God. I actually learned from the things.
Yeah. Before I turn it over to questions, and I have more I'm going to ask you, but if I don't let some of these questions get in, they're going to kick me off the call. I just want to compliment you on two interesting things. I touched on literacy before and how beautiful that word is, and some of the other ways that you express understanding and empathy, and just the fact that this is an educational process, not necessarily a corrective process. It's so, I don't know why it just stands out to me so much. It just absolutely does. It's just beautiful the way that you're presenting these issues. Because to your point earlier, you're keeping people's ears open. You're not allowing them to shut down because of the words that you're choosing. You're not turning people off before you start. You know what I mean? Like it's just wonderful. Okay, I got to turn it over to questions. Claire Lauer, CEO Content Marketing, go ahead.
Yes, well, first I want to say thanks so much for joining us and doing what you do. It's really important to me and my husband to learn and keep learning, and because we want to do better for our daughter and make sure she, you know, we want to unlearn some of the stuff we grew up with that wasn't on purpose, you know, but we want to make sure that she grows up we want her to be better than us, of course. So thanks for doing what you do. My question's not really related, but you know, how do you support an employee who maybe wants to bring you in or wants to have I almost said training, not a training, but like, you know, coaching or a workshop, because she wants to bring you in for, you know, for her organization, but maybe her leadership's not on board or not interested. Sure. So how would you support an employee who wants to bring you in, but doesn't have buy-in from the leadership?
Absolutely. Great question. So number one, everything does have to work from the top down, especially with these conversations. If your leadership does not buy into it, you've really wasted your time. Anything like this that changes on the ground floor, leadership are the ones making the big decisions, and they will change it right back. What I suggest for anyone that would say, you know, Jay, we want to bring you in, we want to have you have these conversations, but I don't know if my leadership will buy into it. Get me on the phone with them. Get me into a room with them. Let me have a conversation. So, you know, if I speak for me personally, that's just a gifting that I've had for a very long time. If I can get into a room with people, ask my wife, man, you know, she thought she didn't want to date me. And then I got into a room with her long enough and, you know, I was able to change her mind. So get me into the room. Let me have some conversations. Let's try to figure out, you know, who they are. What I found is many times leaders who are not on board is because of some specific reasons. Sometimes they've had a diversity professional come in and he was terrible. I've had that. And if you have one diversity person come in and cause you more problems, you're less likely to want another one. Sometimes it is a fear of what's being discussed. Again, this is not an easy conversation, and they're unsure of who do I want to have this conversation? Who do I want to lead this? So sometimes, even if it's on a very small level, some type of relationship that I can form with them could lead towards a higher level of comfort. Even with the things that Pat talked about, and Pat, I appreciate you bringing that up. How I address this and how I go about it makes all the difference in the world. And I'm very intentional about how I do this, because I do want people to come together. I do want them on the journey alongside me and even pushing forward. A lot of times leadership needs to have those type of reassurances, but it really is, you're going to have to start with leadership. So anytime somebody says, hey, we want to bring you in, but I don't know if my leadership is on board. Hey, number one, leadership is probably the ones that's going to sign that check. So you're going to want to make sure, because they're going to be like, no, I'm not doing it. Yeah. I'm not doing it. So let's have some conversations. You know, if that's setting up a call with myself and them and the person, or whatever that needs to look like. After having those initial conversations, sometimes those doors open a lot easier because they get to know me as a person. They find out why I'm passionate about this, that this is actually a life that I'm living as opposed to just something that I'm teaching, which is a big part of the diversity profession that I feel is an issue. Anybody can come in and teach you some stuff out of a book, but if they're not living it, if they're not walking it, you know, if they're not spending time in urban environments and inner city communities and then having to navigate suburban environments and what I call white America and suburban America, being able to not just teach you from an education standpoint, but from an experience, sometimes that information can really help change minds.
I've got a question from Earl. I'm trying to unmute his microphone. Earl from Legal Shield and Go Small Biz. What's your question? What do you say to the other side of the coin? You talk about your friend that talked about color, but what about the other side of the coin? The term sometimes we use that should be changed also. Did you hear that question, Jay?
I did. So I have, if I'll be honest with you, Earl, I have two very different conversations. And I was talking to a guy about this yesterday. So typically you have people that don't know. They don't know any better. They haven't experienced it. They don't get it. They don't understand it. So in those conversations, I have to teach about the historical aspects. I have to teach on what is systemic racism, how that still affects us, the disparities. I have to go through facts. I have to use studies, because that's what really helps people get a grasp on it. When you can start showing them, hey, here's a study where 95 million things were looked at, and they realized there is a huge disparity towards X. People's eyes open. Now, on the other side of the coin, my people, from the places where I come from, and the things along that line, I have to have some very different conversations. And if I'd be really honest with you, I believe in systemic racism. I believe that there are issues that are being perpetuated that keep people who look like me from achieving a certain level of success if I'm not careful. On my side, though, I will tell people that look like me, that's still no excuse. We don't get the excuse of saying just because X is happening, I have to do Y. I have to now make decisions. If this is true, if this is real, that does not mean I can't be successful. I can be successful, but my decisions may look very different than the decisions that Pat, if I use him as an example, me and Pat may have had to make some very different decisions based on who we knew, based on where we grew up at, based on the resources we had available. I was taught by my family, you're going to have to be twice as good to get to where Pat is. That's just what I was taught. Whether that's true or not, I'm not here to argue, but that's what I was taught. But they taught me, you still get a choice. If you've got to do twice as much work, do twice as much work. If you've got to work twice as hard as the person next to you, you still have to make the decision to show up. My grandfather is still one of my #1 advisors to this day. He said, Jay, there's some things you cannot control. You can't control your color. You can't control when you die. Okay, got you, Grandpa. He said, but what you can control, how hard you work, how hard you study, and how much time you put into the things you want to be good at. You have all the control over those things. So when I'm speaking to people that look like me on the other side of the coin, yes, these things exist. Yes, these are things that we have to navigate. Yes, we are out here fighting against them and looking to get them changed. But in the meantime, you have life to live, and you're going to have to make decisions. You're going to have to deal with some things. Some people are going to have to say some stuff to you that you're not going to like. And how you feel is going to have to be very different than how you act. I feel a certain way about a lot of things. Many of us go to work and we go to jobs, and how we feel about that job is very different, because I'm still going to get up and get in my car and go to work, because how I feel does not dictate what I do. And that's how I speak to the other side of the coin. I have those conversations of, here's the decisions you need to make. If you can't be on time, that's your fault. If you refuse to study, if you refuse to learn, if you refuse to have mentors and have people in your life who can help send you in the right direction, these are conscious decisions you're making that add on top of what you're already dealing with. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps. What was that again? So I was a pastor.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. For some reason, Earl's audio isn't coming in very well. He asked, where's your church? Sorry about that, Jay. I just want to make sure everybody could hear that.
I appreciate it. No, thank you. So Earl, I was a pastor at Park Lawn Assembly of God for the last 7 years in Milwaukee, middle of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I actually stepped down from there back in July to do this full time. But that had been church home for me for the last 7 years. Okay. So I still highly recommend them. If you are looking for a church home or are interested in a church, great place, absolutely in love with the community.
To be a minister at a Methodist church at 19th and Center. That's why I can relate to what you're talking about.
Awesome. So then you know and you understand. So a lot of what I'm saying is not far from that. You know, it's how do we take the things that we know work in reaching people. Specifically, again, I've got a background as being a pastor where everything is about reaching people. It's about working in the community. How do I take that, but then switch it and use terminology that will work in corporate environments or work with people who really could care less about church or religion or anything else, but definitely have a passion for overcoming diversity, dealing with social injustice, and it's tying it all together.
And maybe this is following up on what Earl was kind of getting to there and what you were talking about from being a pastor and what we talked about before. It seems like conversations like this in a church is where they have been going on, where you can just love your brother and love someone for the person that they are. It like you're opening the door. At least that's been going on somewhat inside churches. It's not a religious thing, I guess. Is it a mindset thing that those types of conversations have happened there in the past and now you're bringing them outside of the chapel? Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I'll tell you, one of the big issues that we're dealing with right now is, again, church itself is completely segregated for the most part. Mm-hmm. We really go to our own separate corners when it comes down to churches and Sunday morning services, because this is the one place where I get to choose who I'm going to interact with. We don't always have that luxury at work or, in things that we're doing. So specifically in Black churches, we've had these conversations. These are things we address. But many times in many other cultures, it's not necessarily addressed or even talked about. So it's very much still an issue amongst churches and even addressing some of these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So my business is going to corporations, nonprofits, and churches. And the messaging may change a bit. What I'm presenting is the same, but how I present it is going to look a little different depending on who my audience may be.
Is it as difficult to cut through to the other side of the coin, as you and Earl put it, as it is to break through to white America? Or is one conversation easier for you than the other?
One conversation is absolutely easier. It's harder with white America. Many people just don't know. So
right.
If I'm dealing with, African Americans as an example, or even my wife, she's Hispanic. So if I'm dealing with Hispanics or whatever, minorities in general, have an understanding of living in a world where the dominant culture is Caucasian. Yeah. We understand that. We understand that to be successful, we need to navigate the Caucasian world. We call it code switching. Many of us know what that is. But when I go into predominantly white places and I say, how many people know what code switching is? They're like, what is that? What is that? Well, code switching is how I speak, how I dress, how I interact, how I communicate is going to change. When I'm with my friends and my family, it'll look one way, probably more authentic. When I go to work into corporate or into a predominantly white environment, I may look, sound, act very differently because I need to maintain this job. I want to get promoted. I need to not have people fearful of me or who I am. And I want to be perceived as being educated and competent. And what we have learned as minorities is there's a certain way to behave. Basically, there's some rules that if you want to be viewed a certain way, here are the things you have to do. So we've learned that and we're comfortable with it. We don't like it, but it's just what we've had to learn how to do. We've got years upon years of experience. Most of us don't even think twice about it. We just do it. Yeah. Well, on the flip side, for many Caucasians, that's never been done. That's never been considered. So now people are struggling because in this environment today, we're asking for Caucasians to start considering moving back towards our side a little bit, opening the doors. We're asking you to code switch a little bit. Come over here and see how things are done. And people are like, wait a minute. No, this is weird. This feels funny. I've never had these conversations. Why are people so angry? Why are you guys so loud? Just stuff like that. And it's because you're not used to me being my authentic self in your spaces. And up until, if I'm being really honest, George Floyd killed it for me. I was more or less content to do it. It made sense, hey, look, I just got a code switch is what it is. This is how you be successful. This is how it works, how the world operates. When George Floyd died and I had to watch that on TV and I realized that this man had his neck sat on for 9 minutes while on camera and there was seemingly nothing anybody could do about it. Part of me died in that moment and I just quit. I said, you know what? The world is going to get me as I am from here on out. Good, bad, right or wrong, how they feel about it. If I can't work for you and be myself authentically, I don't want to work for you. If I can't bring the best of me, and a lot of times the best of me was looked at as a negative in many corporate environments. If I can't bring the best of me, I don't want to work in that environment. I don't want that relationship. I don't want to be a part of that. If something is going to happen to me and I'm going to leave this earth, I'm going to leave it being authentically me.
Do you remember the first time you put the real Jay out there in a place where you would have code switched? Was that scary the first time? You're like, I'm going to say it the way I feel like saying it, not the way I think you need to hear it. Like you were worried you weren't going to get the job or you were worried how someone was going to react, but you're like, no, I'm going to be me. And if you don't like it, too bad. Do you remember when that happened? Has that happened yet?
I don't think it's, if I'm being really honest, because I've been working at a church in the inner city, predominantly with African Americans for the last 7 years. So they accepted me. I've been authentically me for at least the last 7 years. 100%, good or bad or ugly, whatever I come into the situation, that's what you get. If I'm honest with you, I can take you back to the job I had right before I came to the church. I found out very quickly that me being Jay actually was not a good thing. And it reinforced that belief that this is how I have to act. I came into the job saying, I'm gonna be Jay. This is it. I'm gonna give them me. I'm not doing this anymore. And you know what? Jay absolutely loves people. I am spontaneous. I love to laugh. I'm great with people. I can be the face of whatever you need me to be. I can sell my butt off to somebody. If you put me on the phone or in a room with them, that's who I am. That's what I'm made to do. But what I found out was Jay English was getting pulled into the HR office on a regular basis. You're too loud. You know, we heard you laughing. You're socializing too much. You're having your conversations. So I was part of my job was customer service. And I was being told that my conversations were going too long. You're being too personal with people. How you're in, like, I just go down the list. So I quickly flipped back to James. So James, for those you don't know, is my government name. I tell people to call me James when I need to remember the rules that I need to engage in to keep my job. I switched back to James for 6 years. I had a great manager who told me, I want Jay. I want Jay in my office. And I'm like, you can't have Jay because Jay will get James fired. And that was the last job I had. And when I left there, that was when it was just like, you know what? Never again. I can't do this. It killed me to be that person. And to hear people say, I really enjoy working with James. He's so wonderful to be around. And in my mind, James is not even a real person. He's this fictional person I created so that you would allow me to keep my job. So you saying that you love James actually hurts me because you're not even benefiting from who Jay could be to this organization, to you as a person. So yeah, I would say at this point, I can't say that I don't walk into any place fearful of that anymore. I gave that up. I walk in and I'm 100% myself. The people that don't like it can kick rocks. The people that do like it, I want to work together with you. I want to be here. I want to fight with you. I want to do life with you. And the ones that can't stand it, don't like it, don't bring me in.
Yeah.
It's really easy.
That is so inspiring, man. That fires me up to hear you say that. And good for you, because no matter what your role is, no matter what you do for a living, if you're not doing it authentically, you're not bringing your entire self to what you do, you won't go as far as you could as if you were doing it yourself. And I'm curious, like, if you were a shoe store, we would say, hey, what are your goals for Q4 and in 2021 and such? But you're on a different level here, but I'm still curious, what are your goals with Plain English? What do you want to see happen? And it's like, for the business, what do you want to see happen? But for what you're trying to teach, what do you want to see happen? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Because what you're doing isn't dollars and cents like on a spreadsheet. It's so much more emotional than that. Like you're bringing so much of your J to it, to reach out and listen and give and serve. It's not a normal business, if you will. So like, what do you want to see happen? What does success look like?
Success looks like having conversations where people's heart changes. I'm not looking for more policy in corporations. You know, we can do policy all day long. And as long as you work this job and are in this office, you'll abide by those policies. But that does not change how you teach your kids when you get home. That does not change how you treat the waiter, you know, at your restaurant, or how you treat that Uber driver, or when you go to a place that's predominantly minorities, how you may feel or interact. I'm chasing heart change. I am chasing something within people that touches empathy, where they can say, I may not truly understand what's happening, but you're a person and you deserve to be treated as such. I am wanting people to get out of this political view where when I talk about human rights, it's perceived as this liberal or this leftist, or, you know, let's talk about conservative and these other things. I could really care less about who's president. I could really care less about who's politics. I want to see people being treated as people. I want to see opportunities being given to people that deserve them, that are willing to work for those opportunities. That's what I want to see. So as an example, I had a conversation with a young lady and things went great. She allowed me to do a session with like 40 of her employees. Well, she and I did a pre-consultation before that session, and we're just going through things and we're talking, we're building relationship, which is huge, sharing. And she realized, even in our conversation, she was like, Jay, you know what I realized? My hiring practices may not be the best. I've been hiring people that look like me, who are between, she named this age group, she named this culture, and she said, I'm hiring people that fit this description. Well, any of us who have been in HR know that that will get you fired, because that's not that's not what you're supposed to be doing. We are an equal opportunity employer. We see that everywhere. But the reality is a lot of people are not, because they're making decisions based on their own cultural biases. So she acknowledged her biases. She realized that she had been making certain decisions, and she's like, I've got to do better. I've got to make some different decisions. I'm going to start being more cognizant of who I'm speaking with and the opportunities I'm giving. Well, that's huge. That's a heart change. That's something that, depending on the decisions she makes moving forward, there may be an African-American woman who gets a job that maybe wouldn't have 6 weeks ago.
Yep.
And because she gets that job, how does that affect not just her life, her children? Maybe now she moves, or maybe now she sends them to a different school. Maybe she gets them tutoring. Maybe that changes their lives. Maybe they grow up to become something completely different because you made a different hiring decision. These are the decisions that I'm chasing after. People that own property. Who are the people you're putting into those properties? How are you taking care of those properties? We look at Milwaukee, people will look at certain neighborhoods, specifically the ones that have a lot of people that look like me, and they will talk down on them about, hey, this looks run down. This looks like this. They don't take care of this. They don't take care of that. Well, you know what? In the great neighborhoods I've lived in, when landlords don't take care of properties, we call the city on them. We report them. We turn them in. We don't go to the people living in the rental property and say, you all are running down this building. Well, what we realize in Milwaukee is over 50% of the homes are not owned by people that live in Milwaukee. Most of them are not owned by the people that even look like the people that live in the buildings. So there is a perception, then there's a reality. I'm chasing the reality where if I can speak through corporations, or if I can get into the room at the right church or the right nonprofit, and I speak to the right person that maybe owns 15 units, and he understands that how you take care of these units is going to impact the lives of not just the people, but their children, what they grow up seeing as normal, how they grow up. If you're allowing them to live in a rundown building, what we recognize as normal from 0 to 10 years of age is what we will forever see as normal for the rest of our lives. You have that level of impact through simply taking care of the property that you rent out in a community that may look very different than yours. So for me, success is people's hearts changing, understanding that through whatever power, through whatever authority they have in making decisions to hire, to lend money, for housing. If you own a business, maybe it's your hiring practices, maybe it is the community outreach you do, what you donate towards. If we get people to really understand that and make different decisions because they see the problem and they realize they actually can make a difference, even on a small scale, that is a win. That's how my daughter grows up, and she ends up in a much better world than I'm living in right now. And the world is better for me than it was for my mom growing up. And that's the goal. You know, one of the ladies on here said, hey, I want my child to be better than me. That was the promise I made to my 2-year-old. And she's 3 now. I said, baby, when you get older, daddy is going to make sure this world is a much better place. I promise you.
The show is supposed to stop now. It's supposed to be an hour long. But you're a terrific guest, and what you're doing is amazing. And the one thing that's come through the chat again and again and again is, okay, we're in your professional network. This is a small business rally point show, but we're all professionals in the area. How can we help you? How can we amplify you? How can we support what you're trying to do? Because I've just really enjoyed the conversation, and that's what everybody wants to know. How do we help you expand your impact?
Please tell people about what I'm doing. Have people, if you have, again, we're talking about power and authority. If you have the power, the authority, and I'm going to add a new word, influence. If you have the influence to help bring me in to have these conversations in more spaces, I need your help to do that. The more lives we can change, the more minds we can affect, the more hearts that can open up to this very different world that I'm seeing and navigating and that many people are not aware of, the more change we're able to bring. That's the help that I need. My website is Plain English Inc., plainenglishinc.org. Feel free to go there. I will drop my email address in the chat, so you'll have that. If you have questions, do not hesitate to email me, to reach out, to contact me. But that's the help that I need right now. We launched this nonprofit last year. We didn't focus on specifically this area. This was just really one of the areas we were trying to focus on. But now we're really putting all our eggs in one basket. We feel like there's an opportunity in the world today to really address this and hopefully see some change, so that 60 years from now, my daughter is not marching for the same things that my mother was marching for back in the 60s. That's my goal. And if you can help me get that word out, if you can help me get into places with influencers, decision makers, businesses, corporations, people that have access, power, influence to allow this message to go out, I really believe it's going to be helpful. And that's the help that I need.
Well, like I say, this was supposed to be a 15-minute interview, and it's gone on the entire hour. I can definitely commit to you that I'm going to run you through all of the Idea Coach programming that I've got. We'll talk to the guys at Young Guns Movement and YG Stage and the main event and all the stuff that we're doing to get you more stages and more time, because that's the least that we can do. But it's been a terrific conversation. Thank you so much for what you're doing and for fielding the questions. And I can just commit to you that this is first of many conversations that we're going to have, at least through the people that I get to be in front of.
That's awesome.
I'd love to have
Thank you.
It's
Thank
our
you
pleasure.
for this opportunity to be here. Thank you for taking the time. Again, LZ, thank you, man. That's my brother down there. I love him to death. Been friends for a long time and truly appreciative. Again, just influence. He made a phone call. He had a conversation, and it led to this. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the world one conversation at a time.
I do, LZ, I'm going to bring you on if you're here. You're unmuted. Okay, great. So LZ is the one that told me about you, and that's how I got to you. LZ, listening into this conversation today, is there anything that you want to add? Because we were looking to find some voices to amplify and get out to everybody, and you connected me with Jay. Looking back on it now, what are you thinking about the conversation we had and where we're going?
Yeah, there is nothing that I can add after that. I think Jay covered it all. I think, dialogue, right? My whole mission in life is to help facilitate having conversations and dialogues, because that's to Jay's point, how hearts are changed. So I'm like a proud dad. I'm happy that Jay is here and sharing what he's doing. He's called for this, and you can tell with his passion, and I think that when people who are called are doing things, they're going to go far. So I'm just excited about the connection and everything that Jay's doing.
Oh, that's great. Well, Elsie, thanks for that. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Pastor and CEO of Plain English, Jay English, for coming on the show today. So let's wrap up with a few pieces of information. We do have some business to take care of. This Friday at 8 a.m., the Brand Crafted Social Club is going to get together for coffee networking. Jay, you should definitely come and meet some people. We're going to be there just having a cup of coffee on Zoom, getting to know each other. So a chance to expand your network. Get onto the Facebook group, the Brand Crafted Social Club, and join this free event on Friday at 8 a.m. And then on Monday, 1 week from today, what we've all been waiting for, the doors will swing back open to the Idea Collective for small business owners. It will be your chance to get in and collaborate with the other small business owners that are inside the group. If you text the word WAIT to 414-240-1315, that's WAIT to 414-240-1315. You can get on the wait list. And then on Tuesday, we're going to have a welcome event, and you'll get a chance to test drive some of the events and join our community. So a big thanks to Jennifer Buchholz, who produced the call and worked overtime recapping all the questions. She's the ultimate connector in my business BFF. And thank you to everyone that was on the call today. I've never done a show like this where we did the entire hour was an interview, but Jay was just so compelling. I just couldn't stop the conversation, and we have to have him back on again soon. So that's a wrap for the Small Business Rally Point for Monday, September 28th, 2020. I'm Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. Thank you so much for coming. See you next time.